In today's demo, we're going to look at JavaScript snippets in Lepiter, which is Glamorous Toolkit's note-taking environment and knowledge management environment, and how to make them maybe a little bit safer or better, or at least how to hack them. So we can execute JavaScript in Lepiter, and we can do JavaScript things like concatenate strings and integers and get something interesting. But we can also do naughty things like write to files, and then we get files. And just to make sure that this is actually a file, I just deleted it. Shouldn't be there, right? It's missing. I'm writing to it again, and it's there again, and it has some content in it. So it's actually writing. So that's not great. And that's because if I look at the JavaScript link application, which is the thing that holds the connection to JavaScript, it's actually just running Node in the background, right? And Node gives me all of these things, which is good, but it might not always be. Maybe I need a sandboxed environment. And I was reminded of that because today I looked at DSBY, which is a prompt LLM thing. Doesn't really matter in this context, but I looked at the paper and then I looked at the code, and it has some tools, and one of them is a sandboxed Python interpreter. And I wanted to figure out how it does things. And it turns out it launches Dino, which launches Pyoxide, which is a Python interpreter inside Dino, or rather, it is a JavaScript Python interpreter, and it's running inside Dino. And Dino is interesting. I knew about Dino, but it hadn't clicked, but now it kind of clicks. Dino, by default, doesn't allow you to do anything with the system. It's an alternative Node runtime, or JavaScript runtime, but for instance, if you want a subprocess, you have to say allow run, and if you want system information, allow sys, and environment variables, and network access, and everything, file system access, which is what we just did. And then you have read and write in there as permissions, and you can even say only these files, which is quite neat, I thought. And I realized all I have to change, really, is this, right? The server process path. And so that's what I did in the last couple of hours. And so if I change the server process class here, these are the default settings that we're going to start a server with. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the unique instance of my application. Now if I go to this unique instance again, it's going to be nil, right? And it's going to build a new instance the next time I call something with JavaScript. But if I look at it now, it runs Dino, right? So this thing that just executed is actually Dino and not Node. And so now, if I call this code, the file still isn't there. Right, the error handler actually doesn't do anything, so I don't see that in the JavaScript, but the file still isn't here, right? And that's kind of cool, I thought. At the very least, it shows that I can drop in and drop out components, and I'm working in a live system, right? I can change the system underneath myself. Now, how does this work? Maybe how does this, like, switching this out, this process thing, actually work? Because it isn't quite as easy. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken me a couple of hours to change, right? If we're looking at this process, let's look at the live process here. Should be in the process handler, and then should be in there, the process, right? So this starts an actual, OS subprocess thing in memory output. If I look at it, I can look at the command line. And already you can see I have to do a bit of hacking. So it's quite similar to the normal Node.js one. In fact, I started by just clicking on this and copying the class under a different name, and then I weeded out a bunch of things, and I think some of the names are still referencing Node.js. But the main thing that I had to do was I had to find the executable, which was easy because I already had all of these resolve path things that figure out where to get things. And then I had to make sure that we get a new process, and this requires me to add some arguments. And basically this is all the arguments that we needed. So first off, common.js, because we're still using require in a bunch of places, and Dino works with modules by default, so I had to allow this automatically. Then I wanted to read from the directory that actually contains the server code, right? Because the server is now running in Dino. I needed to access the env variables because some dependency of a dependency of a dependency is called debug, and it just reads all the environment variables. Terrible idea, but I wouldn't ever have known unless I have a flag like this, right? That requires me to allow access to this. And then, some system information that we need, and access to localhost, and on the local network, our server socket address. So I think that's nice. It isn't quite a full sandbox because it still allows a bunch of things, and that's because the server code and the code that's running in the snippet aren't perfectly separated, which is a flaw. I see that, but that's how it currently is implemented, and I don't see that changing super soon because that would be a big change. But it's already, I already can't just read willy-nilly from the file system. I can't write anywhere. I can't access just any network thing. So I think that's already an improvement. Maybe it might not be for your use case. Maybe you want to bootstrap, something on the network with a notebook. That might not be for you. But I think it's an interesting thing to work with and try out. So I'm going to actually probably try this with PyOxide. So just take the whole approach from DSBY. Again, if you're interested in this sort of thing, credit goes to DSBY for doing it first, and also read their paper and stuff. It's really interesting. Also interesting because it's from 2023, and now it's 2025, and it already seems like Stone Age stuff. But yeah, so it's really easy to change this sort of thing in here. And I think that's kind of neat, right? Can you change the runtime of your notebook system that easily? I would hope you can. If not, give me a call. Maybe I can help you. That's all I have. Have a good night.